I want you to imagine two babies born at the exact same moment, one in Silicon Valley to wealthy parents, the other in an impoverished village with no clean water. How can any system of divine justice possibly explain this fundamental unfairness at the very start of life? This question haunted me for years until I discovered a completely different way of understanding how miracles actually work. Today, I'm breaking down the fascinating connection between personal transformation and divine intervention that explains why suffering isn't what we think it is. Like finding an unexpected path through a dense forest when completely lost, this perspective change saved my faith when nothing else could. Have you ever looked around and wondered why some people seem to get all the breaks while others face constant struggle? I mean, think about it. We live in a world where some kids are born with trust funds and connections that practically guarantee success, while others are fighting just to survive from day one. It makes you question if there's any divine plan at all, right? You know those contrasting baby scenarios we talked about earlier? The tech billionaire's child versus the child born into extreme poverty? That zip code lottery of life is actually backed by some pretty shocking research. Harvard University tracked children across decades and found that your neighborhood conditions alone could impact your lifetime earnings by up to 25%. Can you imagine that? The place your parents happened to live when you were born, something you had absolutely zero control over, could determine a quarter of your financial future. And it gets even more heartbreaking when we look at survival itself. According to the World Health Organization, babies born in countries with the highest infant mortality rates are 80 times more likely to die before age 5 than those in countries with the lowest rates. 80 times. Just because of where they happen to be born. I've sat with friends in tears over these realities. One woman I know who grew up in extreme poverty told me, "Every single day was a fight to survive while other kids worried about their birthday parties. How is that part of God's plan?" This apparent randomness takes a real emotional toll on our faith. So many people have had their spiritual beliefs completely shaken when faced with the seeming unfairness of life. They ask questions like, if God is just, why was I born into these circumstances? Or why do terrible things happen to good people while horrible people seem to thrive? I get it. Maintaining faith in divine justice feels nearly impossible when everything around us points to a random, chaotic universe where luck determines more than divine planning. But here's what fascinates me. Despite all this evidence, humans across every culture throughout history have this incredible, persistent desire to believe life has meaning. We're hardwired to search for patterns and create narratives that make sense of our experiences. We want to believe our suffering isn't random, that there's some purpose behind it all. These statistics and stories of inequality force us to reconsider our understanding of justice itself. What if the problem isn't with divine justice, but with how we're looking at it? We're trying to understand divine justice through an earthly lens. We're applying human courtroom logic to cosmic questions. That's like trying to understand the entire ocean by examining a single drop of water. I believe there actually might be a pattern behind what seem like random miracles or tragedies, one that we're completely missing. What if divine justice operates on a completely different principle than our human systems of fairness? What if it's working toward outcomes we can't possibly comprehend from our limited perspective? Consider this. When a parent takes their child to get vaccinated, the child experiences pain. From the child's perspective, the parent is allowing suffering for no good reason. But the parent sees the bigger picture, a moment of pain preventing potentially serious illness later. What if divine justice works in a similar way, but on a much grander scale that we simply can't perceive? When you shift your perspective, everything takes on a new meaning. That perspective shift we just talked about, it opens up a whole new way of looking at divine justice. Can a miracle for one group be a tragedy for another? In the Exodus story, While the Israelites experienced freedom and deliverance, Egyptian families suffered devastating losses. This reality about divine justice is overlooked in most religious teachings. Let's look at the Exodus story for a moment. We all know the basics. The Israelites were enslaved in Egypt for generations. Moses shows up with a message from God, "Let my people go." Pharaoh refuses, and 10 devastating plagues follow, culminating in the death of the firstborn sons throughout Egypt. Finally, Pharaoh relents, the Israelites flee, and when the Egyptian army pursues them, the Red Sea parts for the Israelites to cross safely before crashing down on their pursuers. This celebrated miracle of liberation looks completely different from the Egyptian perspective. Think about the ordinary Egyptian families who woke up to find their children dead. The soldiers who drowned were sons, husbands, and fathers to someone. Jonathan Walton, a Harvard professor, points out something fascinating about this story. He says that while we focus on the collective justice for the Israelites, we completely overlook the individual experiences of the Egyptians. Were all Egyptians actively participating in the oppression? Probably not. Walton questions whether some Egyptians might have even been advocates against slavery, yet they still suffered the consequences of the plagues alongside everyone else. It's hard to imagine that every single Egyptian supported slavery or deserved to lose their firstborn son. Some were likely just ordinary people caught in the crossfire of a divine plan they had little control over. This raises serious questions about divine justice. The Exodus story teaches us that miracles are complex and look radically different depending on which side you're standing on. For the Israelites, the parting of the Red Sea meant salvation. For the Egyptian army, it was a deadly trap. This ancient pattern repeats in our modern world. Economic policies create prosperity for some communities at the expense of others. Medical breakthroughs that save thousands might develop through research causing harm to test subjects. When one person gets the job, another faces rejection. As one family finds their dream home, another gets priced out of the neighborhood. What we call divine intervention rarely happens in isolation. There's almost always another side to the story, someone experiencing the exact opposite outcome from the same event. This challenges our neat understanding of divine justice. We want to believe that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people, but reality is more complicated. Divine justice operates on multiple levels, taking into account factors we can't see from our limited perspective. Maybe this explains why bad things happen to good people, why prayers sometimes seem unanswered, why suffering exists even for the innocent. Perhaps divine justice operates beyond our limited perspective of time and circumstance. What looks like injustice in the moment might be part of a larger pattern unfolding across generations or dimensions we can't perceive. This isn't meant to minimize suffering or suggest all pain is justified, but it invites us to expand our understanding of how divine justice might work. Maybe it's about a larger balance being achieved over time. How do you see these dual perspectives playing out in your own life experiences? That inner balance we were talking about gets even more fascinating when we look at our personal journeys. Have you ever noticed that some of your deepest pain actually became the catalyst for your greatest growth? I want to share something personal with you. 3 years ago, I lost a relationship that meant everything to me. My partner of 6 years decided they needed a different path, and just like that, my future completely changed overnight. I remember those endless nights staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations, wondering where things went wrong. Everything I thought I knew about myself crumbled. I questioned my worth, my judgment, my very identity. The ground beneath me disappeared, leaving me lost in a wilderness of doubt. But here's where my story takes an unexpected turn. That period of intense pain forced me to confront parts of myself I'd been avoiding for years. My need for external validation, my fear of being alone, my habit of abandoning my own needs to keep others happy. These weren't just minor personality quirks. They were deep patterns that had quietly shaped my entire life. When we face intense suffering, we're cornered into dealing with exactly what we need to address. It's like a spiritual excavation. The pain digs deep so new roots can take hold. And then something remarkable happens. Scientists actually have a name for this: post-traumatic growth. Research shows that many people who experience significant adversity report profound positive changes afterward. They develop deeper relationships, greater appreciation for life, and a stronger sense of personal strength. It's not just positive thinking. It's a fundamental transformation that occurs when suffering breaks open our hearts in ways nothing else could. This connects beautifully with spiritual teachings across different traditions. The Baha'i teachings suggest that understanding the purpose behind suffering leads to greater patience and resilience. Abdu'l-Baha wrote about attaining utmost patience, composure, and resignation during difficult times. This isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's about developing a deeper relationship with our struggles. It makes me wonder if divine justice is less concerned with making our external circumstances comfortable and more focused on our internal spiritual development. What if the primary goal isn't to give us an easy life, but to give us the exact experiences we need to evolve? I've come to believe that what's happening on the outside matters far less than how we respond on the inside. Kate Spreckley, who studies spiritual transformation, suggests that the emotional patterns triggered by our suffering are opportunities for growth and alignment with our souls. This perspective completely flips our understanding of divine justice. Instead of seeing suffering as evidence that God has abandoned us or is punishing us, what if it's actually proof of divine care? What if the very things that feel most unfair are precisely what our souls need for growth? A friend of mine experienced this transformation after losing her health to chronic illness. For years, she was angry at God, feeling like her life had been stolen from her. But gradually, something shifted. She described finding a peace that had nothing to do with her external circumstances. Her physical situation hadn't changed, but she had transformed on the inside in ways that wouldn't have been possible without that suffering. The surprising truth is that our most painful experiences often narrow the gap between our external personality and our inner spirit. When everything's comfortable, it's easy to live on the surface of life. But suffering strips away the superficial and forces us to decide what truly matters, often leading us to a more authentic way of being. What if I told you that those incredible moments of miraculous transformation we experience might actually be backed by science? It sounds crazy, right? But the same principles that explain how your smartphone works could shed light on those unexplainable miracles people experience in their darkest moments. Let's talk about something fascinating called quantum leaps. Think about it like this. Have you ever had a day where everything suddenly changed? Not gradually, but in an instant? That's exactly what happens at the atomic level. Electrons don't gradually move from one energy level to another. They literally disappear from one place and instantly appear somewhere else. Scientists have observed this countless times, and it's one of the strangest parts of our physical reality. But here's where it gets really interesting for us. These quantum leaps happen when energy reaches a certain frequency. What if our consciousness works the same way? What if those moments when everything in your life suddenly transforms aren't random luck, but the result of raising your own energetic frequency? Can you think of a time when you were stuck in a negative situation and then everything suddenly shifted? When we're caught in patterns of resentment, fear, or anger, we're essentially vibrating at a lower frequency. But practices like forgiveness, compassion, and love raise our energy state. And just like those electrons, once we reach a certain threshold, we experience a quantum leap in our consciousness that transforms our reality. This connects directly to divine justice. What looks like miraculous intervention might actually be us aligning with universal laws that govern both matter and spirit. Remember when you hit rock bottom and suddenly everything changed? That transformation wasn't just emotional. There might be a scientific explanation for why your entire reality shifted in an instant. Have you ever heard stories of people with terminal illnesses who suddenly recovered after a spiritual awakening? Medical journals contain cases doctors simply can't explain. Cancers that disappeared overnight, chronic conditions that suddenly resolved. These aren't random flukes, but examples of consciousness making quantum leaps that affect physical reality. The science suggests something even more powerful. Our collective consciousness creates larger quantum leaps. When enough individuals raise their vibration through meditation, prayer, or compassion, it triggers shifts in our shared reality. This explains those moments in history when seemingly impossible changes happened almost overnight. When apartheid ended, when the Berlin Wall fell, when movements for justice succeeded against all odds. From this perspective, the universe operates as an intelligent system governed by mathematical and physical laws, applying to both material and spiritual realms. Miracles become predictable outcomes of spiritual laws we're only beginning to understand, not random acts of divine favoritism. When we talk about raising our vibration to a state of pure love, what some traditions call Christ consciousness, we're describing a quantum state of being that operates at a fundamentally different frequency. In this elevated state, what seems impossible becomes natural. It's not about convincing some external deity to bend the rules for you. It's about aligning yourself with the fundamental laws of reality. The universal law of attraction reveals something fascinating about miracles. The universe applies the same principles to small miracles and grand ones. Your perception of what's miraculous depends on your current level of consciousness. As you raise your frequency, what once seemed impossible becomes increasingly normal. Think about it this way. Anything not based in love eventually manifests negatively in our reality. That's not punishment, it's physics. When we align with the higher frequencies of forgiveness, compassion, and love, we create the conditions for quantum leaps in our lives and in our world. Those quantum principles of transformation aren't just modern discoveries. They're echoed in wisdom that's thousands of years old. Remember Boethius's famous question? If God is, whence come evil things? If he is not, whence come good? This ancient Roman philosopher was wrestling with the same questions we struggle with today. But here's something fascinating. He wasn't alone. Across virtually every spiritual tradition, separated by oceans and centuries, there's a surprising agreement about divine justice. And what they understood about suffering might completely change how you see the challenges in your life. We live in a world spinning at hyperspeed. Our culture operates like a movie on fast forward. Food delivered in minutes, entertainment streamed instantly, problems expected to be solved immediately. When something hurts, we want relief now. But this rush for immediate comfort creates a massive blind spot in understanding divine justice. Ancient traditions viewed life through a completely different lens. In Buddhism, suffering, dukkha, serves as the essential pathway to enlightenment. One of Buddha's core teachings reveals that attachment to comfort actually deepens our suffering. In Hinduism, challenges represent karma, opportunities for spiritual evolution rather than random misfortunes. Indigenous wisdom traditions worldwide recognize difficulty as soul medicine, not meaningless pain. The Baha'i teachings bring another perspective to this ancient wisdom. They emphasize that divine justice operates on a timeline vastly different from human justice. Abdu'l-Baha explained that the meaning of our suffering might only become clear much later. It's like judging a movie by only watching the opening scene. You miss the entire story arc. These ancient traditions tapped into something profound that modern psychology now validates. Genuine transformation requires destabilization. The very comfort we desperately seek often prevents the growth our souls need most. I find the Baha'i approach to grief particularly powerful. Abdu'l-Baha suggested parents grieving a child focus on that child's spiritual progress. This perspective acknowledges the soul's journey beyond physical existence and transforms how we understand divine justice. What connects these diverse traditions is their recognition that earthly justice and divine justice follow fundamentally different principles. Our human systems focus on immediate punishment and reward. The bad guy gets caught, the hero wins. Divine justice concerns itself with something deeper, the evolution of consciousness itself. Eastern philosophies particularly understood this paradox. They recognize that chaos and difficulty often align us more deeply with our souls. The universe seems less interested in making our lives comfortable and more focused on making them meaningful. We've lost something crucial in our modern pursuit of convenience. These ancient traditions understood divine timing. What appears as injustice might serve a larger divine plan beyond our current understanding. Imagine trying to judge a masterpiece painting by examining just one tiny corner. This doesn't mean we should seek suffering or stop alleviating it in the world, but it suggests our modern perspective might miss something profound about life's purpose. What if divine justice creates the exact conditions each soul needs for its unique journey? The wisdom these traditions share reveals divine justice ultimately concerns soul growth rather than earthly comfort. Understanding this brings a peace that no amount of convenience ever could. It gives meaning to our struggles and purpose to our pain. How might your current challenges look different through this ancient lens of wisdom that sees beyond immediate comfort to deeper transformation? What if what looks like injustice is actually perfect justice playing out on a timeline we can't yet see? Think about it. We're judging a cosmic movie by watching only 5 minutes in the middle, completely missing the setup and resolution that would make everything make sense. Our perspective is incredibly limited, isn't it? We're confined to this single lifetime, this specific moment, these immediate circumstances. We want answers now. We want justice now. But divine justice operates on a completely different timeline than our human minds can grasp. Imagine a grand symphony being composed across time. Right now, you might only hear a few seemingly disconnected notes, maybe even some that sound jarring or out of place. But the cosmic composer hears the entire masterpiece, knowing exactly how today's dissonant chord will resolve into tomorrow's beautiful harmony. This concept appears across spiritual traditions, particularly in the Baha'i faith, where Abdu'l-Baha teaches that we often can't understand the reasons behind our suffering until much later. What seems senseless in the moment eventually reveals its underlying purpose. Divine justice isn't absent. It's operating on a schedule we simply can't comprehend from our limited perspective. Think about your own life. How many times has something initially appeared terrible, only to become the catalyst for tremendous growth? That relationship that ended? That job you didn't get? That opportunity that fell through? How many of those led to something better or taught you something essential? Here's what's fascinating about cosmic timing. According to spiritual teacher Kate Spreckley, the turmoil we face serves a purpose. It's like a divine alarm clock waking us up to old emotional patterns so we can finally address and release them. What feels like terrible timing might be absolutely perfect from a higher viewpoint. I know a woman who struggled with anxiety for years. One day, everything in her life seemed to collapse simultaneously. Relationship problems, work stress, and health issues all converged. But that perfect storm of challenges forced her to finally develop self-care practices she'd been avoiding. Looking back, she calls it the most perfectly timed breakdown because it led to her breakthrough. Have you noticed how certain challenges arrive precisely when you've developed the strength to handle them? That's divine timing at work. Our impatience often blinds us to this greater unfolding. We demand immediate resolution. We want the pain to stop now. But what if that very impatience is blocking us from aligning with divine timing? This is where spiritual practices become powerful tools. Prayer and meditation help us align with divine timing. When we quiet our minds and open our hearts, we create space to receive guidance about the purpose behind our challenges. We develop patience and trust in the process, even when it's painful. Someone I know lost her father suddenly in a car accident. For years, she was consumed by grief, questioning how a loving God could allow such tragedy. Through consistent prayer, she gradually began to sense a deeper purpose. Years later, that experience led her to create a support network for others experiencing similar grief, touching thousands with compassion born from her own pain. What if every challenging moment in your life was precisely timed for your soul's development? What if divine justice is operating with perfect precision on a schedule designed for your highest good? The Baha'i teachings even suggest praying for the spiritual progress of loved ones who have passed away. This transforms our grief into something meaningful, connecting us to divine timing in a profound way. When we view our challenges through this lens of divine timing, something remarkable happens. We become curious about the purpose behind our pain. We trust that even when we can't see the full picture, there is meaning unfolding. And paradoxically, this trust brings a peace that no amount of understanding ever could. As we reach the end of our journey together, I want you to consider something amazing. The real miracle in your life isn't waiting for external circumstances to suddenly change. It's the profound inner transformation that happens when you embrace your challenges as opportunities for growth. That difficult situation you're facing right now might be exactly what your soul needs for its next quantum leap. When we look for hidden gifts within our hardships, we transform in ways we never imagined possible. Do you have the courage to trust divine timing? Most of us want immediate answers, but spiritual growth reveals its perfect orchestration only in hindsight. What will you choose today? Will you trust that something beautiful is unfolding beyond your vision? The peace you seek comes through trusting the wisdom behind your circumstances. I'd love to hear your story. Share in the comments how a past challenge led to unexpected growth. Subscribe to continue exploring this journey of transformation together. Stay blessed, my friends.